Okay, awesome, nice. I think we're ready to go. All right, so as I said, I'm David. This is my background. I actually study psychology. I really, really love psychology, and that's why I'm building Ream. So I'm trying to help people with mental health and well-being, as well as managing ADHD. So I've worked for startups for about 2 years, from Axal to Titanium, and I've done the incubator program twice, and I've been running my own business for about 2 years now. So this is Ream. You can see the landing page, and we've finally managed to get some decent traction, although the numbers are still very small. It's been growing the past few months, which is exciting. And because it's already quite late, I'm probably going to skip the 10-second demo. So yeah, I think just to kind of get to know everyone and understand, so I can tailor what I'm saying, it would be helpful to kind of go around, and if everyone could just share like a 1 to 2 sentence max of their value proposition, that would be really helpful. So mine is our AI coaching service helps adults with ADHD who want to set goals and take more action by checking in every day via phone call, so don't forget what's important to them, by increasing motivation with the regular progress reports. So do you want a moment to write it down, or does everyone feel clear on exactly what they'd say? You're ready to go? Sure.
Fashion brands who want to reduce their returns by allowing their customers to see how their clothes fit on real bodies, and by
You don't need that if you don't.
yeah,
It's up to you.
by allowing their customers to see how clothing fits on real bodies and what size they ordered, to enable the customer to make a more informed and confident decision on the size to order themselves, and therefore reduce returns and increase conversions for the fashion brand.
Awesome, nice. Who else wants to
I
start?
can do that. Our digital platform helps families of people with dementia who want peace of mind by providing a place where they can record the memories and information about their loved one.
Oh, okay, that's wonderful. I respect that. Nice.
Yeah, okay. So our digital platform again helps mothers who want to go beyond day-to-day responsibilities. I'm trying to say, hold on.
Sorry, I was just trying to, so I don't forget later what everyone said. I'm just going to quickly note down.
Beyond day-to-day responsibilities and invest in themselves by learning the tools on how to manage themselves and tap into feeling heard, valued, and seen.
Okay, amazing, nice. That's really interesting. I'd love to chat about that after maybe. I guess that's just for my own memory. Maybe that's not the best summary. So that later on I can remember everyone. Okay. Anyone else want to? Who else want to go next?
I can go. So we're human-centric AI service provider. So it helps companies understand the positive and negative impact of AI on people by analyzing people's behaviors on the AI models that they want to deploy to make sure that it's safe, ethical. What was the last bit? And
You didn't do that, Tim.
oh,
We jumped out at that point anyway.
nobody did that. Yeah.
It's like flexible, so.
I suppose, and for us to be able to do that properly, we research and develop responsible AI models and human behaviors so that we can then provide that service to the customers.
Okay, nice. And I think there's just 2 of you left.
Our carpooling app help passengers who want to commute by reducing carbon emission and by enabling sustainability.
Okay, nice.
Can you just check what I mentioned? The dementias are I just really might completely miss it.
Yeah, is that correctly spelled?
Yeah.
Dementia.
Dementia.
Okay. Yes, it's a tricky one. Yeah, thank you for your generous valuations. Oh, you're working together. Okay, very nice. So I see. So there is 2 that are AI. Is the carpooling also being done with any sort of AI? It's like a mobile app. So okay, nice. And for the dementia and mom's self-management, how are these being done? Is this kind of like, is this a website? Is this some sort of service you're providing?
It's a website at the moment. We want to make a mobile. That's the next part. But at the moment, it's a web app.
Okay, nice. And
I think it's the same for mine. Like at the moment, it's a website, but then eventually it'd be nice to have an app which has all like resources in it, so it's like at your fingertips. Obviously, moms don't really have time to sit there, and it'd be nice to have something on the go that will just keep them occupied and have everything at fingertips.
I see. I mean, websites are great for startups. I always start with like I prefer websites to mobile apps because it's just fast. But yeah, and is everyone kind of what stage is everyone at? Is everyone like already launched? Everyone are you like I don't know, doing market research? What stage is like have you got revenue? Are you growing?
So I've done a few events, in-person events. The website's now ready. I had like a rebrand, and then
Mm.
from that, everything's now kind of aligned to what I want it to kind of be. So now it's just scaling it and taking it to a place where it actually is purposeful rather than just there for the hell of it.
Okay, I see. Nice. And anyone else want to?
It's a product, people can buy it, but they don't.
I see. Okay. Interesting. And
What be doing research on what people want and filling the gaps. Yeah.
okay, I see. And how about yourself as well?
So, literally what I've described, making those fit galleries.
Mhm.
We're testing it with a pilot brand, so that starts Monday. That's an 8-week pilot, so we're going to collect returns data from that, but also prove the hypothesis that people actually do want to submit their photos and are willing to do that. So, assessing the behaviour there, but also that allowing customers to visualize a body that's similar to theirs actually does have an impact on how they choose size.
I see.
Because our kind of North Star is creating avatars, like
Yeah.
avatars of yourself,
Mm.
where you can visualize the different sizes and how exactly like the length changes, for example. So area avatars at the minute, they're very generic. So if you do a virtual try on, for example, Google, they've got one they brought out.
Mhm.
You try something on, it's not size specific. So that's not actually how it's going to fit you. That's just a visualization of it.
I see.
You
I
want to
see.
make it specific. So to
Yeah.
test that, whether people will actually trust seeing it on a body that's similar to their own, we're trying to use real customer data to do that and just test that personal fit. So yeah,
Sure.
that's something.
Nice. That's exciting. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Like, you're going there. So, all right, I think I'll probably spend less time on the first sections and kind of move forward faster to the later sections because it seems like everyone's already launching and like starting out. So, just a quick question to begin with: what do all of these companies have in common? Does anyone know?
AI.
Nope. Any other ideas? They all started at YC. So Y Combinator has a total valuation of over 600 billion. A lot of huge companies have come out of Y Combinator. They are the best startup school in the world, especially if you're making a software startup, which it sounds like pretty much everyone here is. So how they do it, right? What's the formula for success? And that's kind of the rest of this session. It's all about building something that people want. And it's a really short statement. I think it's beautifully concise, but I think there's actually a lot of information contained within that. So firstly, it's about understanding what people really want, and then it's building that. So in two phases. So where does it all go wrong? It's you come from maybe like you've had a background working for a business. You've been trained in education or in a business to focus on execution, and you go into a startup land and it's all different. It's all about discovery and validation, and those muscles haven't really been trained. So at least for me, what I found was I would go in and I would try to build a really good quality product without understanding what is quality, who actually wants it, right? So it's a mindset shift away from trying to make the perfect product or trying to make something that's really, really super efficient, and instead thinking, okay, firstly, what do they actually want? Secondly, how can we validate that as quickly as possible, and then do the super efficient optimization stuff later. So the remainder of the talk is really focused on this section on discovery and validation. So you can kind of break it down into two here, where you've been shown this many times before, right? The Five Proposition Canvas.
They haven't been shown.
Really? Oh, that was one of the best sessions in the cohort when I did it. So hopefully you'll see it soon. But without going into too much detail on this, it's really, really useful. But there's too many other things to dive in. So the most important part is to begin with the customer profile and really understand the pains and gains, which is what you were just talking about in the previous session as well, before jumping over to your product or service or like features, because you don't really know. You're making a lot of assumptions about the features. So initially, Andreas asked me about making like competitor analysis, but I think the competitor table is filled with assumptions that could just waste your time. So I think instead of focusing straight on the competitor table, starting off by understanding what even is a feature to these people, what do they really care about. So you can break it down into two sections, right? You have the problem discovery, and then you have the solution validation. So, for example, like the reason why it goes out, it diverges, and then it converges, is because you start off exploring many different things, and then you want to narrow down to one hypothesis. So, for example, I would choose, okay, I think this is the problem, and then I would try to go build a solution. But I didn't really go out and explore with many interviews of what the potential problem could be. I went straight to, okay, this is what the problem must be. So it's about taking a step back and kind of expanding before you narrow down. And then crucially, so that's like one error that you can make, which I made, is too quickly narrowing down. But a different error that's equally, or can be equally as painful, is not converging as well. So you can go off, you can do 100 user interviews, and you have all these different insights, and then you forget about all of them. You have to communicate them to other people. You end up relearning the same insights 1,000 times because you didn't actually remember them. So I think a really, really critical part is, after you've collected lots of interviews, after you've done lots of research, after you've analyzed these interviews, write a single page doc. I think there's so much power in narrowing it down to one page. Like, I normally use something like Notion, where there's infinite scroll, there isn't a page. But actually going back to Google Docs, or like just going back to Word and just using a single page doc, like limiting your space, is really, really powerful for understanding, okay, they've listed 1,000 problems. What are the most important ones? If you don't narrow it down, then it's really easy to try to avoid the truth in ambiguity. Like, oh, okay, it's one of these 5 things, we'll do all these 5 things, and then actually haven't really, it's much better to converge on one thing and then be wrong and then try to converge on something different than just have 5 things you're testing at the same time. So yeah, that's kind of the concept of diverging and converging. And this is something that isn't just at the start of business, it's a continual process throughout. So early on, it looks a little bit different. Later on, it changes. But fundamentally, you're constantly exploring, and then you're narrowing down, and then you're exploring again, and you're narrowing it down. And the trick is to do it in small iterative loops, as opposed to trying to get it right the first time. So the reason why that mindset shift was so powerful for me was because it's really easy in startups to feel uncertain and overwhelmed. And it can really harm your productivity. If you're feeling nervous, you're feeling unsure, there's this fear, you can kind of shy away from it like an ostrich that hides the head, and then start doing stuff that makes you feel more comfortable. Like maybe if your background's in marketing, you might go and make a really, really detailed marketing strategy. If your background's in development, you might go develop like a really, really good app, instead of actually addressing, okay, what do people want? So it's kind of hiding in fear. Whereas if you look at that uncertainty head on, and you think, okay, we might be wrong, let's do a 1-week test instead of like a 5-week plan, then you overcome that fear. And then those short feedback loops are unbelievably motivating. When you have users who are telling you like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I want more features, I want more features. There's nothing more motivating than that. Like, it literally pulls me out of bed. It gets me to stay up like late. It's really, really, it's like it can almost become obsessively motivated to continually deliver features that people are asking for. Whereas if you're doing it without continually speaking with users and testing, it's so much more hard to stay motivated in the long term, because there isn't that external people asking you to continue. So yeah, a little brief intermission before we go forth. Any questions on this section?
Can I add a point to that? Like,
All
that's
ears.
100%, because like one of the things that we see in the world of tech today, there's a lot of obsession towards raising funds from investors.
Mm,
So the way companies tend to treat investors, like as if investors are the customers. But I tell people all the time, because I raised investment money, it's a lot easier to get money from investors than from customers. Like I'll go to any investor right now, so if I want to find, but customers, they're scary because they tell you how it is. If your product is terrible, they'll tell you to your face that it's terrible. But if they love it, like you said, they'll tell you straight away, actually, oh, we love that. Can you help us more? Can you add more features, etc.?
Mm.
So this is something really important, because I don't hear enough companies talk about that. Everybody's talking about, we raised this fund, we raised that fund, but that literally means nothing. Your customers do not care about that either. Again, remember what I said earlier. So yeah, that's a really good point. That customers always must come first, and they're the hardest people to please.
mm. And that's a perfect addition. That's really, really helpful as well to explain. I think expanding on that as well, both investors as well as mentors, people doing workshops, me, you, anyone here, they don't have the answers. Your customers have the answers. I can't tell you what to build. Nobody, if anyone comes to you and tells you, oh, this is what I need to build to make a successful business, it's probably snake oil. They're probably trying to sell you a course.
Yeah.
Go speak to your customers, listen to what they're saying, and truly listen, because it's really easy to start like explaining stuff instead of just shutting up and listening. I found that is 10 times more helpful when you like listen instead of speak. So yeah, kind of to zoom out a little bit. So we looked at these 2 points, discovery and then validation, so the problem solution. And now we're going to go over like a quick overview of both of these with some additional points. So will it go back in? Awesome, nice. All right, so has everyone here read the MOM test?
Got a glass of summary.
Nice, you got an AI summary of it.
Yeah.
ChatGPT
Nice.
did, right?
Yeah. It's written like it's already a summary. It's 100 pages. Yeah, it's literally, it is, ooh, it is, it's right here. If you want to download it, I can send you a link. So yeah, it's 100 pages. It's very concise. slideshow, there's a few other books as well. If anyone else wants a link, there's like the Lean Startup, and then there's testing business ideas. They're all like embedded in the slideshows. If anyone wants to.
Can I just interject?
Sure.
Again, just bring out something that Tim mentioned again. Yeah. We mentioned something in the beginning of the whole sessions, which was contrarian thinking in the first principle session. Yeah. And I do have this hypothesis, yeah, which is, and Tim sort of said it in another way, which is that when the tsunami's coming in towards you and everyone's running, you know, towards the mountain, potentially you're much safer running towards the tsunami. Yeah. So again, in the world, you mentioned this, right? On the world of books. Books are not going to be stopped being written. Yeah. But two things are going to happen. Either they're going to be written better, yeah, by a human, and the people will prefer those ones, yeah, and people will actually read them, yeah. So what would happen is that you'll say, oh yeah, there's a bunch of books that I've sort of summarized with AI on audio or whatever, but I haven't read them, yeah. And you'll find that people that actually wrote them and went through the trouble of writing the book actually learned a lot, and also people who actually went down the trouble of reading the book actually learned much more. So I guess to some extent it's a fulfilling prophecy that a lot of people say, oh yeah, it's great, or everything's great, but in the real world you say, well, do you actually read? No. Do you actually write? No. And AI is taking your job, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not hard to decipher, you know, like if you're doing what everyone else doing, you know. So that's what I kept on saying, that, you know, you need to get better at thinking. You need to get better at being critical, because then it is what most lazy people are going to start doing. Not to call you lazy or call everyone lazy, but, you know, it's very tempting. And don't forget, these tools are meant for that. Are meant for being convenient. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that perfectly illustrates the value of stories. If I just gave you the conclusion and told you the one sentence, but like it doesn't really sink in, you don't really learn from it. But if you live through the experience and you feel it, then you are able to remember it much more than if you were to just get the conclusion, right? So some books, I would say, are not worth summarizing. Like this one is really, really gold. Every page of it is gold. There's many books that are just, they should have been a blog post, to be honest. So it depends. It's just you don't always know which ones they are until you've read them, which is like tricky. Anyway, so getting to the story about discovery and the mom test. So initially, when I started out Ream, I saw, okay, people telling me go talk to customers. I saw it as a checkbox exercise. I was like, all right, I'm just trying to get people to tell me that what I'm doing is good, so that these external people who are telling me, you know, gather evidence, will shut up, pretty much. So I was just asking questions like, oh, okay, I'm building this thing, like, would you love to use it? Not exactly, but pretty much. There was leading questions, etc. And that led to, I spent a year building something just to realize it's not going to work. I would have been much better off failing in a month and then pivoting than spending 12 months building it and only realizing. So after reading the mom test, I took a different approach. There's someone called Samuel who used to be at the incubator, who was great, and he's now at Apple. And he was a product manager at Spotify. So I had this business idea that was different to him. It was about creating an AI that would gather feedback from an app. So like, let's say you're using an app and then there's something you don't like, an AI pops up and have a conversation with them. And then it extracts all this detailed feedback and sends it to the founders. So I was really excited about this. I was really tempted to go and spend a year building it. But instead of building it, I went and I spoke to the ideal customer profile, which was a product manager at a startup, which Samuel was. So I found him, I asked him, do you have like 10 minutes for a brief chat? And I didn't mention to him what the idea was. I just said to him, or I just asked him, can you tell me about how you currently gather feedback? Tell me about your process. Can you recall a recent time and explain it to me in depth, step by step, everything you did to gather this feedback? Where were the pain points? What tools were you using? And after him talking for 10 minutes, I basically realized he does not have any problem with gathering product feedback. He's got lots of other problems in retention and in onboarding and in revenue, but getting feedback from users was not an issue for him at all. So clearly, he wouldn't be a good customer. But I thought, okay, screw it. I'm just going to finish the interview. I'm going to tell him what my idea was and see his reaction. And he loved it. He was like, wow, this is so cool. You should definitely build this. This is such a good product idea. I thought, okay, you just told me you don't have this problem, but now you're really excited about the idea. If I asked him, what do you think of this idea? I would have went and spent a year building it. But because he didn't know what the idea was, he was much more honest because there wasn't that bias. So I thought, okay, what does the mom test say about this? Focus on commitments over like future hypotheticals. So I said, okay, I'll build a prototype next week. Can you pay me £1 for an hour of usage? Said, "Oh, well, actually, we have this and this and blah blah blah," and he wouldn't commit to a singular pound. So there's what people say, and then what people do, and there's so much bullshit, not even intentionally, but because um, people, they want to be nice, they want to tell you what you want to hear. So it's just cutting through that noise by getting concrete commitments. And then there's a last part of the story, which is I continue doing this with different ideas. So at this point, I had already started building out Ream, which is like the voice-based AI coach, but people were struggling to stick to it. So I went to one of my existing users who was struggling to use it, and I said, "What if I made it a phone call that called you every day at a set time?" And they were really, really excited about this. They were super hyped. So I spent one day building this really hacked, scrappy version where it actually called them. And they loved it. They were super, super excited about it. And I said, "Okay, if you're really excited, will you put down £7 for 7 days of usage?" Because I calculated out it would have to be £30 a month for it to be profitable. And they did it. They paid me £7. And then I went and I built the proper version. So before I built it, I had already got £7, knowing that someone is willing to part ways with their money. And I think really, you don't, even then, it's still not fully validated. But I think cash speaks so much more than any words can. Even if someone tells you some past concrete, "Oh, in the past, I've spent money on this," really, until they send you money, it's all just in the realm of ideas.
So there's a phrase for that. Maybe you can add this for the next corporate will bring up independently. Someone, I think at Welcome Here, actually, they say, "Show me a credit card swipe, and I'll
Mm,
show you traction."
mm,
And I just think it's so fucking true, because what happens is that if you think of it as a ballot, as you say, vote for me, the credit card swipe is literally like that ballot, you know?
mm.
So it's like almost show me a ballot issued and I'll show you preference. Show me a credit card swipe and I'll show you real traction.
I think one of the reasons why the tech sector especially lost the value of that, because like in the 2010s, the big deal was like how many users you have. So you had loads of apps that would have,
Sure.
we've got 1 million users, 10 million users. How many of them are paying users? None. But the vanity, it's called vanity metrics,
Mm.
right? So people kind of got obsessed over vanity metrics. So hence a lot of companies died who had millions of users because none of them paid them. So that's really the thing. So either the users pay you, or if you're like Instagram, nobody ever paid you, but you know for a fact that somebody like Facebook will buy you for $1 billion, then okay, that's a different story. But that's rare. Most of the time, it's really, yeah, the proof is in the cash.
Yeah, especially now with like how zero interest era has ended, cash is absolutely essential. I mean, I'm sure you know much more about that than I do, but yeah, it connects to the previous point you mentioned as well about there's investors' dollars and there's customers' dollars, and like one of them is a vote, one of them is
Vanity.
yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
raised $5 million. Good. How many people bought your product? None.
Yeah.
Like you heard of the 9 out of 10 businesses die, right? You know, all of them are funded. They don't die because they don't have VC funds. They all die because they don't have customers. All of them have VC funds. Well, actually, Builder AI. You guys saw Builder AI company that was worth what? Like Microsoft invested in them, and their valuation was like 1 point something billion, and they died because it turns out that most of their AI is actually cheap workers in India. I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Amazon had it too, by the way. Amazon had it too. Those
Yeah.
stores in London that you go allegedly and AI picks up that you're buying something. They someone whistleblowed that actually what was happening. So they were sending a video feed to place in
3,000.
India, a
Yeah.
place in India, and the
Yeah.
guy was seeing the screen like, what did they buy? Oh, they bought this, and they'll just put it in.
It was
You know?
3,000 employees in the Philippines. Actually, I think it was
Yeah.
Philippines. 3,000 people. Actually, so basically the camera that was supposed to be reading your or rather using AI to recognize the items or whatever. It was actually a person. It was like, that's a sandwich. Oh, that's orange juice. That's Amazon.
I mean, I completely agree. That's scandalous. But just to present a balanced view, I think for a startup, doing things like that can be great as well.
Yeah.
Where
Oh, yeah. But you don't lie about it, because you know people
Yes.
say again, because I'm old enough to remember what it was like when Apple was still small, well, smallish. But it was like when people going about fake it till you make it, because Steve Jobs did it. No, Steve Jobs did not fake anything. The demo that he had on stage, it just didn't work, but the product did exist. He didn't make stuff up. He didn't say, "Oh, you know, we've created this technology that can do all of these lovely things," but the reality is that technology doesn't exist. No, it did exist. They built it. It's just on that demo day, it just didn't work. So he had to fake it on that demo day to kind of, because he had to demonstrate something to the audience. So he faked it then, but the product was not fake. And I think there's that major problem that people think, oh, fake it till you make it means, oh, you just build a fake product to see if people going to buy it. No, that's called fraud. please don't do that. You get serious trouble. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely don't condone fraud, but doing things like maybe making a landing page for a product that doesn't yet exist, and then getting people's emails for waiting list.
Yes.
Can
I made, so I use a tool called V0. So it's like you prompt it and it does all the code.
Yeah.
So I prompted it to make like a widget on the brand's website that showed the fit gallery.
Mhm.
And so I sent that to the founder, and she put me in touch with the team. And obviously, at that point, she thought it had already been built, but we
Yeah.
literally spent the 3 weeks to onboard them building it. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely think now, I think a lot of the books that have been written on these topics, especially one that I'll cover later, is things are changing so quick with AI that what works is now different. So you can just build 3 prototypes in one day. So if they're clickable and you can gather analytics on them, it kind of devalues creating like a prototype using like Figma or Adobe XD, where it's not a real website, it's just like a false website. It's actually faster now to build a prototype website than it is to design a fake website.
Can I just say
Fair,
that
fair.
just to not fill up the conversation, I'll pick it to length a bit. You know, there's nothing wrong with scrappiness, being scrappy. There's everything wrong with lying and being prompt. Yeah. Airbnb, albeit it's very big now, but just work out in your head, like the actual steps. When they were doing the first thing, which a website was good enough, it worked, and they were competing sort of with other things. Brian Chesky's been really open about saying that they took a little bit of money to do the sort of reservation platform, but actually what that accounted for was one email that they got, and they got it like easy wants to book David's place for next Sunday, and they will like pick up the phone and say, "Hey David, we got an email from NC, like can you rent it for us?" Like they'll do that, many times, and of course at some point they're being scrappy and testing things, and at some point it just becomes like shit, like we cannot do this every single day because it's gonna kill us, right? So we need to build a platform. But whilst you're doing that, I think there's a lot of value in learning how to, so is he pays by credit card, or David expense, a receipt, or where's the money, and like dealing with all those things as the part of being scrappy, and then being almost like David is saying, being a lot more clear on what you need to build, rather than sticking your head on the sand, just thinking, oh shit, like we need to build like this whole system needs to do that. All the meantime, nobody cares about you because nobody knows about you, So I think that there's a lot of power in being scrappy, and I completely agree with you. Arguably now, much easier to build something really, really scrappy that sort of works.
Yeah.
And people don't mind.
People don't mind, yeah,
As long as you're open about it. Like like what I said earlier, it's about transparency. I think people now, like, trust is becoming a feature these days, because in the last 10 years, trust was lost. Like people basically lied. You had Theranos, for example. I don't know if you guys heard of Theranos. It's a company that said that it's a biotech company that you take a tiny drop of your blood and it can diagnose you all sorts of different things. Turned out that doesn't do anything. She's in jail now.
Well, she started from a good place, which was, I think, like if you go through a story, she said, I think we can really build this, and I had like some sort of confirmation, although a very weak confirmation, that they can build something like that. The thing is that, as any hero's journey, it went out of hell, because all of a sudden she was valued at 1 billion or whatever. She got a lot of money and said, shit, like, I'm getting more money just being.
That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of ego. Remember what I said? There's a lot about ego that we get. The media, like, they kind of like to stroke our ego, and a lot of founders go like, "Ooh, okay."
I'll say the first 6 months of her, where if you just like trust her on 6 months, you say, okay, you're building something that's pretty much impossible, but you at least were looking into it.
It's right.
I think afterwards she stopped looking at it completely, and she said, "Yeah, you know what? Like I'll make more money selling myself than actually doing the thing."
Yeah, I think that's both really valuable additions. So thanks for that. So yeah, some tactical suggestions for how to do interviews. So this is the fast version. I highly recommend Crisp.ai for transcription. So it's not intrusive. So you don't need to get like a second person to join. It works with every single app. You can do it also in person. You can record on your phone. It has both video and audio transcriptions. Gives you summaries, and then I suggest afterwards pasting in the conversations into any chatbot. My preference is Claude because of like responsible AI, as you mentioned. But I found that getting an AI to analyze it has never worked properly for me. I think going through and actually analyzing it yourself is so much more valuable than just getting an AI to do it. I've tried 1,000 different approaches to get the AI to do it. It was like a year ago I was trying the approaches. Maybe now with the new models it might be better. But to be honest, yeah.
It doesn't do it anywhere near as good as your understanding of it.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't still.
So it's worthwhile going in and doing it yourself. So if you want to do the more detailed version and actually go in and do it yourself, you can. I mean, you can still do. You can still use Crisp. You don't have to use OBS to record your screen. But if you want to properly analyze the recordings yourself, I highly, highly, highly recommend Dovetail. So this was actually recommended to me by Samuel, who's the product manager at Spotify. And it's a place where you can just dump in any audio recordings, video recordings, documents, like survey results, anything. And it makes it really, really easy to annotate them. And then from those annotations to create, so for example, you could, wherever you highlight, okay, pain point, pain point, pain point, you can then create a video of all the highlights, like a highlight reel of everywhere that you highlighted the pain points. So then you can share that video with your team. Whereas if you just have highlights, it's harder to empathize with the user. But if you have the video of all those highlights clipped together, it's easier to actually feel what the user is saying as you go through. Or also things like thematic analysis on like a whiteboard with sticky notes. It's really, really good. So I highly recommend Dovetail. It just takes a lot of time to actually go through and do it. So
I think that's a question. So when you get your responses, are you finding in 1,000 responses 10 bits of gold dust, or are you finding every response is giving you what you need?
Something that's really, really valuable here is around you have to segment your responses by the type of user, and then they're very different from that perspective. So, for example, what you might think is gold dust for this one customer is actually completely bringing you off, off piste with what your actual ideal target customer will do. So like, let's say maybe you speak with a student, and a student will tell you that they really, really, really value this specific set here, but their needs are so different to perhaps someone who can actually pay for your product. And maybe you could meet these needs here perfectly, but they will never be able to pay for your product.
Yeah.
So what's the point of meeting their needs? So segmenting the analysis by different cohorts, I think, is an antidote to overwhelm and uncertainty. Because what can happen is you get all these different people pulling in different directions, and now you're like, oh my goodness, what do I build? Like there's this way, and then you're running around with like a headless chicken. It's much easier if you just go, like you said, the vertical AI or like vertical SaaS, just going super narrow, this specific person, the specific situation, and describe the situation in detail. Really try to empathize with where they are, who are they, where they're trying to get to.
So I was asking really because I mean, the AI tends to try to solve your problem instead of giving you an assistant. And I'm thinking, okay, well, all I would want to try to do is automate. You've gone through a process of looking at the things, and then you do something, and then you do something.
Mhm.
So I'd be saying, well, I don't want the AI to summarize things and do all that. What I want it to do is do what you do.
Mm.
Does any, and I ask you the same question, have you got a product which does what you do, or have you got only AIs which sort of blank? Because now I'm going to go and build. That's what I'm thinking is, well, it sounds like there's a niche there because you end up spending a lot of time doing something. My guess is there is something automatic in what you're doing. You're pattern recognizing something. It's just not what the system is doing for you. It's not replicating your action.
I mean, look, like I do think it's just a bit. I do think that many of the AI things are gonna get a lot more better in time. So if you just wait and see and almost like because it's not in our control, right? It's in some elements and in Google's and whoever's, right? They'll get better, but there's value in the work, right? Especially if you're in the very early stage, and that's where the consultant mindset I was talking about before kicks in. Of course, you can interview a lot of people, but it's almost like that gut feeling that you're getting from say this and say this and say this. Even visiting the customers, right? It sounds slow, but at the beginning it really pays off. And you wouldn't imagine like how many of the big companies actually have done this. To actually visit the customer, actually rent the places, actually do the thing that they were doing.
It's like what we were saying earlier about the book versus the summary, right?
Yeah.
If you get the conclusion of my story, if I just told you, if I looked at this and I said, get people to put down a financial commitment instead of having a hypothetical situation, you would know the conclusion, but you didn't live through the experience to then be able to understand it. So I think having that, we learn similarly to AI, where AI needs just loads and loads and loads of data, and then it's able to pattern recognize. I think similarly, the human brain, like if you just give it the conclusion, it doesn't really absorb in that knowledge the same way as like if you get someone to sit through 10 hours of user interviews, and really, really listen and empathize, all that data, it kind of works in ways that we don't like. It's not a conscious process of like reasoning. It's more like just the amount of stuff you've packed into your brain. You now have the experience to understand it better.
Also, can I just share like a very simple example, which I think it has almost like the power of those very simple phrases, which are simple but not easy, right, to digest because they just contain so much information. But I think I really like about say something like Elon Musk, yeah. Never mind Tesla, never mind the things, but one thing that he talks about in his book, yeah, or in the book they wrote about him, is that he usually goes to the weakest, almost like the weakest link, the closest link to the thing that they're doing. So, the engineer that's actually hammering the metal that will go into rocket, yeah. And he asks very tough questions to those people. So he's like, hold on, why is this like billionaire guy, like the ultimate boss, going to this potentially, guy who never minds about anything, just do the works that he's been told to, right? And if you remember this, maybe, just talking through people in construction, you see that people in construction and people like closer to the actual work, they say, oh yeah, you know what, the boss asked me to put that thing. That's boss asked me. I'm just gonna do it. And if you ask a question like, why doesn't it hold? Well, because they asked me to save money and just put it that way,
Well, my general philosophy, actually, Jeremy is my witness of that. I mean, my general philosophy as an entrepreneur, you need to get your hands dirty. You can't, don't outsource anything to anybody. Like, I'm not a data scientist, but I'm surrounded myself with literally the best data scientists, and they teach me. I mean, not only that they teach me, like if I'm talking bollocks, Jeremy will tell me, Tim, that's bollocks, right? Like nobody cares that you're the CEO or whatever. Nobody cares about that. I don't really care about it. For me, it's about, well, how much can I learn? Because then, at the end of the day, as the decision maker, it's my decision at the end, but I have to make an informed decision. I even, like, for example, I hate law. But I am very good at reading contracts because I've read, God knows, I don't know how many contracts for 25 years. Oh, yeah. I don't provide legal advice, though. I have to say that legally. So no coverage. No, but seriously, it's like, because even with lawyers, you've got great lawyers, of course, they can do all the stuff. But at the end of the day, I want to understand the process, because sometimes, like that did happen to me before, in fact, with investors, where I saw something and the lawyers were like, say, oh, this is actually, yeah, this is safe for you, Tim, blah, blah, blah. But I read something, I thought, you know what? I don't like this statement here. And I would explain to the lawyer why I don't like it. And the lawyer would be like, that's actually a valid point. We can change it if you want. So yeah, I want that to be changed. So it's like, as you start kind of getting your head around it, because for me, intelligence is not data, it's experience. And this is the difference between humans and AI. AI will never have experience, they have data. Or whatever experience they have is the experience that we humans share with the AI. But still we share it in the form of data. But ultimately it's the experience that makes us smarter, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that as well, with around there's certain things you definitely want to get your hands dirty with, right? So in particular, understanding the customer's wants is a top number one priority. If you know that, everything else will follow. I think also prioritizing something, almost by definition, is also deprioritizing other things. So for example, working as a software engineer, there's a lot of complexity around architecting the perfect database, for example, right? As a startup founder, it's having the ability to stop yourself from going really deep into like niche things that don't actually matter anywhere near as much as understanding the customer's wants. And that's something I struggle with a lot, to be honest. I have a tendency to, I want to get my hands dirty in all of the nitty-gritty details of like development, where really it doesn't really matter anywhere near as much as this priority.
Like you said, that's your safe space, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's talking to customers is scary, right? Like you don't want to be insulted every time you talk to them. But I've got this. Oh, this website looks weird. Okay, let me change the website, right? Like that, because you need to change it, but it's
Yes, living in the comfort zone.
Again, I mean, it may be impossible examples, but if you bring it down to if you guys bring it down to a very simple thing, yeah. You research Franceschi, he very openly says that the first thing that they got in Y Combinator, right, is that they met with Paul Graham, one of the famous investors, and they said, "Oh, your product was great. Like you've been talking to customers." Or yeah. They said, "Have you stayed in their houses?" No, you just take the bookings. And the guy, like the Big Daddy, right, like the one who's invested in the company, said, "You need to go the next month, stay in every one of your customers' houses now." Yeah, that's funny. I'm not kidding. Like you need to understand like what are you actually selling? What's happening? Right?
God bless Paul Graham. Everyone needs to read his essays. Paul Graham has written so many essays online that like you can make a book from his essays. And there's I've got a few recommendations at the end for podcasts of people who like read and analyze his essays. They're very distilled like nuggets of gold. He's met so many startup founders that he's able to like pattern recognize from the thousands of people have gone through IC and made successful businesses. So I highly recommend his essays. But yeah, so to kind of go through quickly some more like practical stuff on structuring interviews. Some things I found helpful is sometimes when you get people to talk about their problems, you can get a little bit. It's helpful to let them talk for as long as possible, but especially like for me, it was people with ADHD who have a tendency to talk for a while. I could spend 4 hours in a user interview, and that really doesn't scale. Like you want to do things that don't scale, but it's hard. So I found helped is having a prompt on the screen where you have a bunch of problems on screen. They're like sticky notes, and we hop on this a tool called TLDR Draw Together. You don't need to log in. You can just go in, and what I do is I get them to rank each one of these like potential problems and how important it is to them, and how to what extent they're satisfied with it. And then we just select between like 1 and 3 things to go into. So all this stuff that isn't actually a huge problem to them or they're pretty satisfied with, we avoid speaking about it because we could just waste hours on things that would never actually make a successful product from. So getting them to organize or select a few things, put in that box of like very important but very unsatisfied, and then going into the conversation with that kind of prioritization to begin with has been really helpful at cutting out some of the noise. So yeah, some things to consider when they're talking about the problem. Is it a frequent, important problem that they're willing to pay for and pay enough for? Particularly if you have an AI product. So typically SaaS would have crazy gross profit margins until AI has boomed, and it's so much more expensive than any part of the software stack. Like for me right now, I have like gross profit margins of about 50%, which for a SaaS company is pretty atrocious. Like you would expect 80-90% for a SaaS company. Whereas with AI, you actually have to be really careful. I'm charging £30 a month for a consumer product, which is a very expensive consumer. So all these guys like Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, they are all losing so much money on the subscriptions. They are burning through investors' cash, and it makes consumers really price sensitive to the actual prices that they need to pay for you to be profitable. So if I charge £20 per month, my gross profit would be basically zero. So it's something really important to consider. Would they pay for it, and would they pay enough for it? That's like a key question to underline that if you are making an AI product. So that's kind of one approach to doing an interview. Another approach I found helpful is kind of what I mentioned earlier with the competitor analysis is kind of jumping the gun to, okay, these are the features people care about. You don't actually know what they care about, and you don't know what they're comparing you to. That's making so many presumptions. So, for example, here, let's say this is like analysis for Reem, right? Do they actually care about insights from the data? No. Like, I made this initially, but the more I've spoken with people, the more I've realized they care about getting started on working towards a goal. They know what to do. They need to get started. So, or for example, having having the quality of the reflection is great, but they didn't open the app. So if they start the conversation, having a guided reflection is great, but they didn't open it. So what they need help with is sticking to it consistently. So that's why I kind of changed to sort of having like this website. It's a phone calling where it actually calls you each day. So kind of connecting this back to the user interviews, the way I would approach this is you go to a user, you get them to describe things they've tried to solve the problem and why they started using it when they ended up not using it if they stopped. And based on what they say, the reasons they started and stopped using it, that's where you get your features from. You don't get your features from thinking about it and think, oh, okay, I think this would be a cool feature. You go and speak to your customer. Why did they choose, or a user, why did they choose this app? That's one of the things they care about. And also you'll realize a lot of the time, it's right. No worries. Yeah. Oh, nice. It's nice to meet you. Yeah, have a lovely day. So yeah, I think very often your competitors are not who you think they are. Very often your biggest competitor is Excel or just a Google Doc or a notepad or paper. I think the status quo, or like just getting an intern to do it. Like you might think, okay, I'm making this AI product that's going to like automate this workflow, and you're comparing yourself to 5 other like AI products. Your customers aren't comparing you to 5 other AI products. They're comparing you to a piece of paper, an intern, or Excel. So thinking about substitutes instead of competitors, I think is really powerful, and that becomes apparent when you speak with them. You actually get someone to talk about, oh, what have they tried? You know, I could compare myself with 5 other AI coaching products, and then realize in an interview, these people are not considering 5 other AI products. They're considering, for example, like a coach. Well, that's depending on again, a core thing that's really important that's missing from this competitive grid is who is it, what scenario are they in, and what's their problem. Because one thing could be a feature for someone, and for another could be like a detractor. So really narrowing down who is it, that's from whose perspective are you creating this competitive table is key. So yeah, asking people to explain why they chose it and why they stopped using it is helpful for interviews. All right, we are almost done. We're making some good progress. Brief intermission. Any questions?
Well, I have after the interviews, semi-structured interview, we can do thematic analysis. After that, can be planned for the survey as well. So survey are reliable if we do like SurveyMonkey or other tools.
They're not better or worse, like more or less reliable. They're just different, and it depends on the situation. So in isolation, interview or survey is not better or worse. It's like, what do you want to find out?
Both.
Yeah.
Or after doing some kind of like 20, 50 interviews, you can identify some kind of like pain point, you say, or some kind of theme.
Yeah.
Based on theme, we can design the surveys.
Yeah.
Now,
To be honest,
we can-
I'm very biased. In my opinion, I don't like surveys. There's probably some good use case for them. If you want quantitative data, I much prefer making a prototype and gathering behavioral data rather than asking someone. Because if you ask someone, often what they say and what they do is very different. So, for example, if you make a landing page and then you see how many people join a waiting list.
Yeah. Nice to meet you guys.
So yeah, if you ask a survey, do you care about this feature? To try to get quantitative analysis of like what features are most important, the data you get there might be misleading. Whereas if you did, for example, you create 3 different ads for 3 different value propositions. You run them on like Google Ads, Facebook Ads, and you compare the click-through rates. Okay, everyone's clicking on this ad. That's focusing on this value proposition. No one's clicking on this one. That's the quantitative data that we have. But there might be some value in surveys as well. I'm just biased, to be honest.
Because in our case, it's more about like change in behavior. Because in terms of mobility can say that mobility is right for everyone. But every car consumes some kind of emission, cost, and all car seats. So we are trying to utilize the empty car seat by offering some kind of solution, the pull-up model, so that they can share the car, and so it will be the win-win situation for both of them, and same time the environmental, economy, and social. So we can add the multiple features like reliability and the social security, like transparency. So in that case, like it's not like a pain point for someone. Some people might be in need; they can adopt quickly using the app, but it is not like for everyone who is using the car. They are enjoying their luxury. But in place of their own car, if they are motivating using our platform, it's more
So
kind of
so jump
changing behavior.
So if you think of, you said it's not a pain point for someone. It's more like a luxury, right?
Luxury.
You've described so far kind of a feature, but who and what context were they trying to achieve? So, for example, if you thought of there's someone who has a big car, but they're struggling to pay for their children's breakfast, and they're really, really financially stressed, and they really need more cash, and every day they go to work back and forth between 2 big cities. Someone in that situation who wants to get more money, and they are in that opportunity where they could transport people back and forth, has a big pain point of like struggling financially, and they really need to find more money. In that case, like they might have a big pain point. So I think it's just looking at the feature, not in isolation, but kind of where are they trying to get to, and then the features like very
In
dependent on
that
that.
case, we can identify like the utility perspective, more feature we can add depending on the interview goals.
Yeah.
Getting information from the
Yeah, I guess if you wanted to do quantitative as well, like let's say you have people in this 2 cities. I think like let's say that just to kind of ground it into a specific example, right? Let's say you have people in between that travel between 2 cities, right? Is there existing research that's quantitative you could find that has already answered some of that question? Because what I found was I spent a lot of time trying to answer questions, and then I did a detailed literature review, and I realized someone else has already asked this question, and they've researched it in so much depth, more than I can do, that it's easier to just like find out. And then yeah, kind of right. So let's say you could get secondary data to answer that question in that specific scenario, or you could do a survey and analyze like, okay, in this, how many people are in this kind of scenario, and how much would they be willing to pay or something like this. But yeah, I guess just making it really concrete. Like, what is the key question, and how can we answer it with the least amount of effort? I go into this in the next section. But yeah, does that help at all? Is there anything else?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome, nice. All right. Okay, so the next section. Boom, bada boom. Okay, so how to validation. This is the lean startup I highly, highly recommend it. If you haven't read it already. I'm not going to get into too much depth about this, but essentially, it's about the most important thing is identifying what is your biggest, most important question to answer, which is your value hypothesis, right? So let's say for you, it might be that I know um, people would want to like travel with an extra person in the car. It's like the most important question to answer, prioritizing that, and then incrementally gathering data to answer it. I didn't do the best job explaining that, but essentially, I go into it a little bit later, which I don't think we'll have time to do, but identifying what's the most important assumption you've made that you have the least amount of evidence for. So let's say here, these are your leap of faith assumptions. So it's really, really, really essential for your business, and you don't know that it's true. Most of the time we kind of just presume it's true. We assume it's true. We don't acknowledge that we don't actually know. But breaking it down, identifying those assumptions, and then focusing on. Sorry, I can't see my mouse. Okay, there we go. And then focusing on getting evidence to support those assumptions. So instead of necessarily like, if you find out your assumption was wrong, that's good, because it means you didn't waste your time. So it's a mindset shift of I'm not trying to be right, I'm trying to be successful, and that might mean I have to acknowledge I'm wrong. So what's beautiful about that is it's kind of it takes some of the weight off the shoulders of like you can go and fail, and that's good. Like going and failing a bunch is much better than avoiding failure and then realizing actually this was a failure in 12 months.
Feedback, not the
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But that's why it's so painful, right? Because in a sense, it's much easier to develop a deck for an investor and just say and try to sell to the investor, so he's trying to make an investment, rather to go to actual customer and say, and the customer says like, why would I want that? I love your analogy of like, just going to the simplest person in the room, just then telling you like, yeah, my notepad is your competition, right? Sometimes I'll go to my wife, literally my wife, say, hey, I'm thinking about this idea, and she'll go like, why would I do that if I already have the fridge? I've never thought of that. Like, I mean, I'm just saying any example, but it's almost like, why are you thinking that? That's not even a clever idea. Like, you already do this by this very simple means of doing it. It's like, shit, yeah.
Yeah, it's really tricky. It's like a delicate balance between you need to have conviction in your ideas and really commit to them and come out with confidence and certainty, because that's what sells, that's what works.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to be completely open that you're completely wrong and that you'll completely pivot and do everything again, which is a really difficult thing to do both. That's what I found. It's like, yeah, if you acknowledge that you might be wrong too much, then you could lose the people's conviction.
So something really interesting happened with the iPod, and I think not too many people know this story, right? Which is that the Apple was thinking about building a competitor because they thought like the forces in the market, the forces in that time, they were the right forces in terms of Napster coming in, the industry, the actual industry looking for a solution to be legalized in terms of like selling music online, but they didn't know how. MP3s were coming out, but there was a lot of sort of tensions of there's something to be done better here, yeah. So that was a thing which is on their laps, yeah. Not the iPod as in their laps, as there's something around that we could enter that category, yeah. But there was also a very sort of lucky moment, yeah, where one of the commercial directors for Apple that buys parts goes into Toshiba, and Toshiba says, you know what, just in a random meeting, they were talking supply stuff, right? And Toshiba says, you know what, like, again, it's completely like at the end of the meeting, we created this disk, yeah, which is like this little piece of disk, it's a small one that nobody wants to buy. We were wondering, like, if Apple, were you interested in this? And they said, like, hold on, what is that? Well, you like the regular disks that laptops use are 2.5, and we've come up with this idea that we can sell like a very small 1.8 type of drive. It's very small. Sadly, it's very, it doesn't contain like much things, just like 5 gigabits instead of like 100 or 58 gigs or whatever. And they said, and what are you doing with that? Well, we've tried offering to everyone, but nobody wants to buy it. Like IBM or HP, like nobody wants it because the industry standard is the big one, right? And the commercial guy took it to Apple, and the guy at Apple said, shit, like it could hold like a million songs or 1,000 songs, And they went back to them and said, like, are you willing to sell that to us? So, yeah, just put an order. Like, nobody's buying them. Well, no, we actually want to license that from you and just use, like, you cannot sell it to anyone in the next 5 years. Of course, like, nobody wants it. So if you want the whole production, just take it, and that's the basis for the iPad. So it's arguably, of course, you can read a lot of the technical innovations, so like the creation of the product, but arguably the real thing was that a piece of technology suddenly became available. And by the way, if you're closer to Apple, in terms of like more than the fan, just read through. That's what Apple has done many times. Like they didn't come up with the technology; they just piece it together in a very nice way, in the right moment, the right time, which is much easier said than done.
I think that's like most of creativity is really just like deconstructing other people's things and resynthesizing them, like analysis and synthesis.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, shit, So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Cool, nice. Thanks for that addition as well. So yeah, something I wanted to add on to this. So you might have seen this before. This is really famous, like popularized from the Lean Startup. We've spoken a bunch about building quickly and like scrappily, but I think the other two don't get enough love. I think there is so much value and so much complexity that is worth learning about in measurement and learning. So being very rigorous about how you collect the data and avoiding vanity metrics. So for example, on Ream, every time someone gets a phone call, I measure how long was the phone call, how often do they call, and I can see, okay, from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4 to week 5, what percentage of people drop off? And it's not on aggregate, it's specific to that cohort. You can see, instead of saying, okay, they use it at least one time for 1 minute, it doesn't really represent value. Instead, I measure how many people use it 5 times per week for at least 5 minutes. Making it really strict cuts out the BS, because there is so much. If you were to just measure, okay, how many signups do we have? You could completely delude yourself. Or if you were to measure page views or signups or anything like this, there's just so much nuance that's missing in that. So that's measurement. I have another slide on it that's really good. And then with learning, that's one that I recently had the realization that I was not doing enough of. It's after you've built something, you've measured it, it's taking some time to stop, to narrow it down, and to write about it. So you have all of this data, you have all of these insights, and then going down, making like a 1-page doc of actually interpreting, what does this mean? How does this impact our direction of our business? And then making key critical decisions. Okay, this is what will change as a result of it. If you just build and measure and don't actually pause to narrow it down, to interpret it, and then to implement the insights, you might as well not build a measure, because you're basically just winging it. So yeah, pausing to write has been really powerful for me, because when it's not written, it's super easy. Like if you have a conversation about it, it's super easy for unclear thinking to slip through the cracks, and actually you're not. There's a leap in logic somewhere. There's like more assumptions within it. So pausing to write a concise 1-pager can be really powerful. So yeah, this is what Andres was talking about earlier. Start scrappy. So my first customer payment was directly to my bank account. My next 5, there was no Stripe integration. I had a custom Stripe link that I sent them literally through WhatsApp. Right? There was no way. Like previously, the first time I was doing in my business, I had this whole workflow that was super optimized. I was really efficient. It connected to the database. It had the webhook. Everything was integrated perfectly. And I spent a year building it, and nobody bought it. What a waste of time, right? Here, I got payment without even having a Stripe account, firstly. Then I got all the other subscriptions without having any integration with my database. They were all just manually set up. Same thing with my onboarding. All my initial onboardings were done extremely manually. They would take on average like 2 to 3 hours. So it's much better to do that than just go straight to automating and making it efficient, and then gradually evolve it.
There's like a flow that we could automate. That's the plan, to automate it. But at the minute, we're using different tools. So we've built our own form just on Tally, so anyone can build a form.
Yeah.
And then from there, that data, we connected it to Airtable.
Nice.
From Airtable, I've got to manually put it into our back end.
Yeah.
Obviously, once this is actually an MVP, that we'll have our own form that we built.
Yeah.
Just go straight into our back end. But for now, the quickest way to do it was to just do it like that using different tools.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's definitely the right way to do it. I've learned the hard way. That is much better than creating the perfect system to begin with. So 100%.
Start. That's more.
Fair, nice. That's good. Your developers got their hat screwed on, or head screwed on. So yeah, I was doing something very similar with. Actually, I think I've got it on the next slide. So if we just zoom in, so my initial onboarding process. Basically, I was sharing links on a bunch of different channels. So, oh, that's a bit blurry, but LinkedIn, Reddit, Discord. I was sharing a bunch of links. I was going to the landing page. But initially, there wasn't even a landing page. So this is already like version 4. Going to the landing page, they asked for early access. Then we'd arrange a meeting. We'd have the onboarding call together, and then I'd give them a 7-day free trial, and then send them a Stripe link. Right?
Network means that.
Sorry,
What is the network means?
network.
Network.
Oh, network means people I know. People I know. Yeah. So I guess perhaps like you are part of that. So I guess this room would be
What-
that. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
That's me.
So yeah, I found, and then I mapped it out. I analyzed each step, and I saw where were people dropping off. So the early access request form was connected to Notion, where I had like a customer resource management, like a manual version of it. I'd go through every single one. I'd respond to them. I'd track who is converting. I identified everyone was dropping off at this point. That like once they got to the meeting, it was good, but a lot of people just didn't want to schedule a meeting or didn't want to respond, even though they put in their phone number on the landing page. So and then I saw as well, this is where the better conversion was. So based on that, and there was also there was a bunch of people who weren't responding. It was really bad conversion rate, and there was a bunch of people who were responding, and then I wasn't scheduling the meetings because I had too many of them. And each one was like 4 hours. Like, okay, maybe between 2 and 4. Some of the longest ones were 4. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but no. So they'd seen a demo of Ream over here. They go on the landing page, and it was currently you needed a code to sign up and try it. So to get the code, you had to schedule a meeting. So it was people who wanted to use the product, and I was kind of I was the pathway for them to get the product. I found getting people to sit for an interview for a while is hard, or at least I feel guilty asking them without having anything to offer in return. Whereas getting them to do an interview and then try the product is easier. So yeah, based on the low conversion, I then identified these 2 places to improve. So instead of having to schedule a meeting with me, you'd have the AI do the onboarding. So you can now, thank you, bless you, Andreas. So yeah, you can now go in and you don't need to schedule a meeting. You can go through, you can fill out a questionnaire, and you can try a coaching session and set up an account, fully self-service. And the huge advantage of it being automated, which is actually really key, is here. These were rough estimates. You can see these were estimates of conversion, probably give or take 5%. Now we have every single step of the funnel mapped out. Where are people dropping off? It's called PostHog, but there's 1,000 other tools that do the same thing. I highly recommend PostHog for like web app analytics. So yeah, from here I could see, okay, loads of people were dropping off at one step. So could I improve it, or could I just remove it entirely? Could I just like reduce the process? And through that, it's much easier to know exactly where you need to optimize, because you get like aggregate values as well. So if you ask someone, okay, which part was confusing, which part wasn't confusing, they'll tell you. But it's not quite as good as getting like 500 people to try it and then seeing what percentage of them drop off. That's like really cuts through some of the BS again. Another thing, kind of like going into metrics. So there's this framework called Pirate Metrics. So this was introduced to me by Samuel. I've mentioned it a few times now. He's been great. So it's kind of breaking down, instead of just thinking, okay, we need to measure landing page traffic, or we need to measure our revenue, breaking it down to each stage of the product. So how are users finding you? And then really, really, really important one that people don't put enough time and thought into is activation. So also onboarding. If everyone drops off, like if they go on the landing page, but then they drop off and they don't use your product, that's that's not going to go anywhere. So yeah, segmenting your traffic by sources is also key. So we went over onboarding here, like onboarding analytics. Then there's every link that I share. So you can see here are the gray ones when they weren't tracked. I don't know who's coming from where. So it's really hard to know where I should focus on. But then I started, every single link I sent has tracking on it using UTM tracking like this. So UTM source, and then you have where it's going from. And then you can see in your analytics tool, okay, the majority of people are coming from LinkedIn, or the majority of people coming from Reddit. So on one day, I made a LinkedIn post. On one day, I made a bunch of messages, like cold messages on Reddit. And then I also made a Reddit post. Where are they coming from? Which one should I do more of? Should I do more LinkedIn? Should I do more direct messages? Should I do more Reddit posts? I don't know. But then here you can see, oh, actually, Reddit's what's working best. So that's where I should really narrow down on. The Reddit post did much better than LinkedIn post. So having it be segmented is a lot more valuable than just having raw traffic. So yeah, if you want to, you don't need any like special link to track it. If you just add this to your link, UTM_source, and then write a description. It's gonna be like UTM source Reddit, UTM source LinkedIn, or if you have multiple different. So for example, I have Reddit comments, and I have Reddit posts, and I have Reddit messages.
What on your, so if somebody comments on your Reddit?
No, comments I make on other people's posts. So okay, I share my links all across Reddit. I share it in messages, I share it in posts, and I comment on other people's posts
With the link.
with a link. All three of those have a different link. So then I can go and I can see, okay, even going finer grain from Reddit, are they coming from the direct messages? Are they coming from the posts? Are they coming from the comments? I realized no one from the direct messages is opening the link. And all of the clicks are coming from comments. So I knew, okay, post more comments. Yeah. You're the marketing whiz, so I'm curious if you have any thoughts.
How do you make those different, you said that each of one has a different UTM tracker. How do you make sure the links are all different? Like you've done that, segmented them, so UTM,
Yeah.
type of thing.
So you have UTM source Reddit, then you can differentiate from Reddit LinkedIn. But if you want to differentiate within Reddit, you can then specify it further. So for example, this one doesn't cover all the UTM, but you can do UTM medium, and then this can be email, add, or we can add anything else in there. So I literally don't need any software. You just add it to the end of the link. That's the standard UTM track.
But then how do you track what you tracked?
Then every analytics tool has a built-in. Like UTM is the standard for it. Every analytics tool, you'll be able to segment it by UTM source.
Which
Post not.
Facebook's one, or like ads and stuff.
Haven't, but I'm curious to like delve into more. For really the shit. To be honest, I spent a lot of time making all the dashboards, like those countless hours. That's what I was saying. Where I think a lot of people talk about building and like, oh, you need to do the scrappy version fast. I feel like that's been spoken about a lot. I think what's kind of a hole that's missing in a lot of people is like, okay, you've built it, are you now measuring it extensively? Because like, let's say you've made 3 different prototypes, which one's working better? Like, let's say you've committed, okay, this is the product I'm going to make. You try this onboarding, what's working, what isn't. Then going really in detail with this has a lot of value. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I will share indeed. And then the final one, which I think is the most important one, really, is retention. Because even if you have loads and loads and loads of people using your product, if they all drop off, it's pointless. They'll all cancel. So you have like, you've got your monthly subscription price, like let's say for me it's £30, and then you have the customer lifetime value. So if the average person stays for 6 months, then the customer lifetime value is much higher than £30. If they drop off after a single month, then that makes a huge difference. So knowing how long people stick around is really, really important, and measuring that precisely is key. There's
So obviously with our app, like the PSC we built, it's a little widget that they embed on the product page of their website.
Mhm.
So we can monitor how many people click onto that.
nice.
But in terms of the return rates, we're going to have to rely on the brand to give us
Yeah, so who's your customer?
data. It's a fashion brand. So we partner with them through Shopify.
And do they, is it a monthly subscription?
At the minute, this is a pilot, so free. We're doing
Okay, I see.
free.
One thing I'd say is I did free pilots for ages. And I feel like there is something really like special about, like, it's different. If you ask them to pay, I think it cuts through some of the noise. But free pilots, like, it makes sense as well. Because otherwise, yeah, you might not get people who want to give you feedback. So
Also, we might try and change the metrics dependent, because our pricing originally we were going to base on how much we reduce our return rates and take a percentage of that, for example. But if you do it like that, then people might start telling you, okay, well, you didn't reduce return rates, so
yeah. Well, one good thing there is though that is insightful in itself, because figuring out that problem is going to be necessary to make it like to get payments for it. So yeah, that's a tricky thing to overcome. So yeah, there's this 30-minute video that does a much better job than I could do sat here about cohort retention. It's excellent. I've watched it 5 times. I've taken notes on it. It's a must watch for any business. And yes, I'll share the entire slides. And yeah, that's basically it. These are a bunch of resources, more videos here for you to watch. The 2 books up here. And then there's a really good book called Testing Business Ideas that has this huge table of experiments you could do. So this is how much evidence they give you, and then how long it takes them. So instead of just thinking, I need to build a prototype, there's so many other ways you could do it. Like, for example, here you have like, it's a Nice to meet you. Have a great day. So yeah, for example, you could do, all right, you could do a survey, but there's so many other ways you could do it. Like you could do a analysis of web traffic. You can do a social media campaign and see how many clicks it gets. Or you can do Wizard of Oz, which is like you pretend you have a product, where you're just doing it manually all on the back end. Or you build a single feature app that just has that one thing, and you see the people come. So there's all these things you should probably do before thinking about building a prototype. Like it's just they're faster and cheaper. But it is different now because of AI. So for example, making clickable prototype, you used to do that on something like Figma, where you sketch it out and they could click on it. Now with V0, you're much better off just going straight to like coding it. Yeah, which is definitely faster than actually trying to do it on the design stuff. So yeah, kind of design AI is behind coding AI. So because of that, a lot of these things need to be shuffled around. Like making a prototype should actually be prioritized compared to what they show here. But yeah, this is still a pretty useful table. And actually, this entire book is just filled with like gold. It's very, very good. So yeah,
It's weird.
yeah, I mean, it's so concise. It barely even has like barely even has words that you'd want to summarize. It pretty much already is a summary. So we just scroll through here, like the amount of text it has. Yeah, and it's already super visual. Yeah, it's great.
And you can color it too.
Yeah, yeah, it's a coloring. Yes. I hope you guys found that helpful.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Awesome. I will share it indeed.
Stay
No
free.
worries. Yeah, appreciate you staying.
Thanks, David.
No worries. Yeah, there's three talks in one day. I find that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Boom.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No worries. I'm curious.